Today's video is the second video in the three-part series sponsored by LG and their 2021 range of OLED C1 gaming focused televisions. We're talking 120 Hz, we're talking HDR, every protocol, we're talking G-Sync, FreeSync, VRR, everything you could want, it's there. 1 millisecond response time, 6.2 milliseconds of input lag, ridiculously thin panel, just top of the tree stuff, absolutely spot on. And this is again sponsored by LG. The TVs were sent over free of charge for me to make content with. So that's what we're doing. Today, we're going to get there's one TV on the floor here, there's one still in the box. I'm going to get another monitor stand built up. These are the GT Amiga Prime monitor stands I'm using. Get the other one built up, move some speakers around and try and get the triples up and running. So there's going to be one there, I've got to move that top speaker, and one here. And that's going to be the objective today. Get them fired up and have a little go, set a game up, you know, ACC or Project Cars 2, and just really experience what these three ridiculous 55-inch OLED C1s are like. You know, it's just going to be insane. So bear with me. This bit will all be sped up so you don't watch me spend the next 2 hours setting stuff up. And when I speak to you next, we should be in the seat, hopefully, setting some software up. Well, they're all installed now, and I must say, they look pretty sweet. So let's take a little close-up of how they are now. Then I'm going to take you through the correct setup procedure for triple monitors, choosing the correct angle, or should I say, calculating the correct angle rather than choosing it, because it shouldn't really be a choice. It is a mathematical calculation. Then we'll look at the NVIDIA surround setup, and then we'll do a little bit of sort of gameplay footage to show you just what it looks like. So there they are, and what they're just, I can't get over the size of them, the color saturation, the blacks. It's all, I mean, it's all stuff that we know OLED is of course best at, so I shouldn't really be surprised. But when you've got three of them sat there, 55 inches of OLED glory, you can't help but admire them. And of course, from sort of sat in the cockpit type, you know, situation, you can see how it wraps right around us. We've almost got probably somewhere in the region of 180 to 200 degrees field of view wise, something like that. And again, just have a little look around the monitors themselves, TVs, how ridiculously thin the screen actually is. But yeah, it all went smoothly. They all installed nicely. And you know, there's very small bezels, and of course hopefully I will be getting rid of those bezels with the bezel free kits. But yes, that's those installed, that's what they look like. Let's now get to the sort of calculation and software side of things. So the screen angles, the side screens, your second and third displays, if you want the image that you see within your chosen sim or game to be geometrically correct and a 1-to-1 scale with real life, which we all do, I don't know why you wouldn't. You know what that means is when you're sat there, everything looks, it's exactly the right distance like it would be in real life. You know, dashboard will be life size, windows, doors, mirrors, everything will all be life size for the car that we're in. So you do want this. Now obviously if you've got really small triples, you're not going to actually see much of the insides of the car, and if they're particularly far away as well, you're going to see even less, because the closer that center screen is to you, the tighter the side angles will be based on this geometric mathematical calculation. So if your screens are miles away and they're small, they're going to end up being almost like one big ultra wide, so to speak. But in the case of these 55s, I'm having them as close to me as I can within the limitations of my rig and what have you. And so the angles come out somewhere in the region of 70 to 75 degrees. So they actually go down past my head and allow me to look fully 90 degrees to my right and even a little bit behind me and have this huge field of view. But yes, you can't just stick them where you want. Well, I mean, you could, there's nothing physically stopping you from doing it, but it won't look right. Things will look wonky and the scale won't look right and straight lines won't transfer properly from one screen to the next. So I found a great guide online that walks you through how to do this calculation. The chap that wrote it, pucker job, big respect to him. He's also done on the same, I'll put a link to this in the description, he's also done guides to properly calculate horizontal field of view and vertical field of view as well, and even the reverse of what we're doing, which is if you want them at a specific angle, maybe because of the shape and size of your room and you have to have them a certain way, the reverse mathematics is here so that you're then told how close or far away to sit from the center screen. But anyway, let's get some screen capture on the go here. This is the formula here. Now it looks complicated to start with, but it really isn't. I'll simply walk you through it step by step. So if we break it down here, 89 is in this example is the guy's distance from the screen. For me, this is 84 centimeters. Let me just bring up the calculator as well. Yeah, for me this is 84 centimeters. So I do 84 times 2 gives me 168. What you then do is take the full width of one of your screens, which in his case is 97.7 centimeters, but in my case is 123 centimeters. So I remember my 168 and I put in 123 for the full width of the panel and I divide it by 168. That gives me 0.73, blah, 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 blah. You then apply an inverse tangent function to that number. So make sure you're on Scientific Calculator here in the Windows calculator. Click the Trigonometry tab, click second to bring up the second list of functions, and go over here to the inverse tangent function and just click it. That gives us 36.2, blah, 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 blah. All you then do is times that by 2, and that gives us the angles that our two side screens should be at. So in this case, 72.4 degrees. Grab yourself a protractor, literally an old school protractor, or an app on your phone, although that's not the easiest thing to use, I did try, and make sure your TVs or monitors are set at whatever that angle is calculated at, and that is where it must be to be geometrically correct and a one-to-one scale with real life based on how far you sit from your screen and how big your screens are. So, super useful, and a big thanks to the guy that wrote that. It's such a simple calculation when you actually break it down and do it. It looked way harder than it really was. So, now that we've done that, and obviously I've done that, my screens are set at the correct angle, we'll now go over there, get into the rig, and we'll bring up the NVIDIA surround options, and I'll show you what you need to do there, and then we'll step into a sim and I'll show you what you need to do there. Obviously there's many sims, I'll just choose one and show you as an example. They are all very similar in the way that you set them up. I am here, I'm just tucked out of shot a little bit. So I wanted to show you it sort of like actually on the screens here, just so you can see how to do it, rather than just screen capturing. So you right click your desktop, you go to the NVIDIA control panel. Now obviously I've already set this up. So you'll notice here, it says surround display ticked. That's our current display. This is my Zeus monitor that's over there on the desktop. So this is where you will end up when everything is all said and done. You can see we've got one huge display showing there. Now, what you have to do to get here is first of all flick from your desktop monitor over to these three. So what you would have here is three separate displays all labelled LG, or you can actually set up the surround display while still being on your main monitor, you know, over on your desktop, which is what I actually did. And once I set it up, I then just unticked my desktop monitor so that I was just left with these three here. But to do that, you come up here to configure surround. You would tick span displays with surround. For me, it popped up a warning saying I needed to close Outlook and my Logitech G Hub, so before it would let me go any further. So I had to do that. Then you go to configure. Now, when you first do this, all these menus take absolutely ages to pop up. And every time you make a change, the computer just seems to take an eternity before it actually manages to do it. But so don't sort of like start panicking if things are hanging, so to speak. It does eventually do it. Now you can see here 2, 3, 1, that just happens to be the position I need based on what HDMI cables I have plugged in where on the graphics card. You come down to the left hand side here and you choose 1:3 because obviously we want one big screen spread across 3 monitors. Nice and simple. And then if you want to use bezel correction here, you can. This is where it's kind of up to you. For me, I chose to not do the bezel correction here and instead do it in each sim separately. Because when I did do it here, I found that even though it was correct, certain sims still needed tweaking in themselves to get everything to line up just right. And in the end I thought, do you know what? I'll just leave this here at 0 without any correction and do it in each sim title. That way I've only got one set of variables that I'm playing with per sim rather than this 2. But if you want to do it here, you can click in here and this appears on the left hand side there, and you can use that image as it crosses over the 2 screens to line everything up. And if you do the bottom one, it goes over to the right hand screen, and if you tick this here, it links them both together. So you can do it if you want, but I chose not to. The next thing you need to do is choose your resolution. Now, the resolution you see here, 7680 by 1440, is effectively 3 1440p displays at 120 Hz, and of course HDR is enabled as well. Now, I've settled on this resolution because if I run the top one, which is 4K, I can only hold with my RTX 3080 50 to 60 FPS in most sim titles without having to turn the visuals in-game down more than I'd like. For me, when we're making a realistic as possible setup like this, I need the graphics to look as realistic as possible. And dropping down to 1440p still gives me a super sharp image. You know, we're not talking like 800 by 600 here. That's still a high resolution. That's still, you know, double 1080p pixel count, so still very, very sharp. And at this, I can run every sim title on either Epic, ultra high, very high, or high, depending on the title. And I get between 80 and 100 FPS, which I think is a nice compromise, and it looks bloody amazing. So that's what I've chosen. Now for me, I actually had to add this resolution into the list here by clicking on this one here, and you can move from here, the resolutions over to the ones that are active. For some reason, this resolution wasn't active. There's some right random ones that are, like 4098 by 768. I don't know why you would even use that, but this is a video for you. They're there. So that's what I've settled on, and that's what works best for me with a 3080. If you're running the same graphics card, you'll probably find exactly the same scenario. And all you do then, you know, making sure these 3 are in the right order, and that's really simple to do. You've got 3, 1 and 2 on the displays themselves, and you can just double check by moving something across the screens, making sure they flow from left to right as they should. Once that's all good, you just click apply. The screen will go black and hang for about 20 seconds like it did for me, and then what you'll end up with is your 3 triple screens all set up nicely like this. So the next thing you want to do, obviously, is load up a game. So let's load up Project Cars 2, as that's what I last used, and I'll just show you how you change it in there as well. It's not too complicated, but you can see I've got HDR, or you might see HDRs popping up on the TVs to show that they're all receiving that full HDR signal, which of course you want. 120 Hz, 1440p. You can't ask for a better experience. Well, you could ask for 4K, but that's just greedy. Perhaps with a 3090 I might be able to do 4K, but not with a 3080. So you can go to options, and you can go down to your triple screens here, and you've got center screen, left screen, right screen. Now for me, with my bezel width And you can see my distance to the screen, 84 centimeters, as I mentioned earlier. And in fact, the total physical width of my monitors, 123 centimeters, again, as we used in that calculation earlier. Physical height, 70 centimeters. My bezel width, left and right, it's about 10 mil per bezel. So the two together, with 10 mil is 1 centimeter, so 1 centimeter each. 2 centimeters either side, the left and right there. I had some slight peculiarities with this one, but left screen, obviously, same width, same height. No bezel correction here because I've done it using the center screen tab. If I did it here as well, then it'd be like I was adding it on again. And the same applies to the right hand side. But my right hand side screen is obviously sitting just a touch off and just a touch down compared to my left hand one. And you've got to remember, these stands are on carpet and it's almost impossible to get the monitors perfectly in the same place. So physical width is the same, physical height is the same. I had to add a touch of extra bezel adjustment, 0.3, so less than half a centimetre. And I also had to do a little bit of negative vertical offset because that screen's obviously sitting just a touch lower, or possibly higher, whichever way that one works, than the centre screen. And for me, that got it all perfectly centred and all scaled correctly, and it just looks amazing. The only other thing you need to adjust for this is your field of view, which I believe is under, where is it? Under there? No, I think it's under HUD actually, which I can't see right now, so maybe we need to start a race before we can see the HUD options. I can't quite remember, so we're going to load this up anyway. What I'll actually do is show you some sort of helmet cam footage of me racing here, because that shows by far the sort of experience that you actually get sat in here, especially when it's of an evening and it's dark and you can't see my white walls in the background and the sort of the carpet in that as well. One of the things I'm going to be doing in the third video, aside from trying to fit the bezel-less kit, is actually kind of making my own sim racing sort of pod, but we'll see how that pans out as well. Now, there we go, edit hard layout, or is it visual effects? Camera, there it is. So we are on cockpit camera. 75 is the correct calculated field of view for my setup here. And again, if you go to the link in the description where you calculate your monitor angles, there is also the calculation there to get the correct field of view, again based on distance and the height of the screen and the size of the screens, etc. So that's the only other thing you need to adjust. Otherwise, once you hop in, you may find things don't look exactly right. Now, we'll just quickly look there. You can see everything looks, well, this is another thing to point out, both on this camera and on the helmet camera, if things like the mirrors look a bit wonky, the scaling looks a bit wrong, that's not how it looks to me in person. That's just how this camera and the helmet cam view things, because obviously they are lenses, single lenses, and as humans we have two eyes and they work very differently to camera lenses. So the way this is all set up and done and calculated looks perfect from where I am. Everything flows, all the straight lines match up. It's exactly as it should be, and that is what you'd experience should you follow this setup guide as well. Anyway, let's get this restarted. I'll get the helmet cam footage on the go and you can see exactly what that looks like. Now, the experience of driving like this is just, it's like VR, but not VR. You know, you haven't got the sort of stereoscopic 3D perception that you would have in VR, you know, and really that affects more than anything else your cockpit, your steering wheel, your shifter, your handbrake, because they're what's all around you in VR. Once you're looking out of the windows, the front windscreen, the side screens, it's actually very similar, not the same, but very similar to what we have in this sort of triple setup. But of course, in a triple setup, you don't need stereoscopic 3D imagery of the cabin you're in, because we are sat here in our racing cockpits with our real steering wheels, our real shifters, and our real handbrakes, and our real seats, and our real pedals. It's all actually physically here. What we don't have is, of course, the dashboard. So that is probably where it falls slightly short of VR, because we're looking at a flat image of a dashboard in front of me here. But beyond that, once you just look out of the windows, the windscreen, the side windows, look at your mirrors, you really get a very similar feeling to that of VR. Not the same, but very, very similar. And to me, this is my personal preference. I don't like wearing a VR headset for too long, you know, especially when I'm sim racing, it's just hot and it's sweaty. And also I get a little bit of motion sickness. Oh, and interestingly, when I first started racing like this, I actually got the same feeling of motion sickness because my brain felt so in the car, in the cockpit, that it was that similar feeling to VR. And I say similar, not exactly the same, similar. So, you know, each to their own, whether you prefer VR, whether you prefer triples, that's up to you. But it's a very, very good alternative. And like I've said before, they all have their pros and cons. For me, not having to wear a VR headset, you know, being able to just swap seats with my friends and take it in turns to do dirt rally stages or whatever, is a big deal to me. If we have to swap a sweaty VR headset over every time, first of all, it's unpleasant for the second player. Secondly, you've got to adjust the head strap, the IPD. It's just a ball ache. You know, reset your position in VR. If you're tall, you're going to have your head out the roof. If you're short, you're going to be looking at the steering wheel. It's all he's doing every single time you swap over to one of your friends, which in dirt rally could be as short as 4 minutes. So for me, hopping in and out of a seat like this, so much quicker and easier. And I just like the freedom of not having that, you know, VR headset on my face. But this is very personal, it's each to their own. But what I can say is it looks absolutely amazing. It does feel, once you tune in, especially at night time when the lights are off in here, it does feel very much like you're in the cockpit of whatever car it is you're driving. And I think if you're someone that can't do VR because of motion sickness, this is a hell of a second option. Or even if you are someone like me who can do VR, I can race for probably an hour or so before I feel a bit too unpleasant. I personally still prefer this. I like to see, you know, the steering wheel I'm using in real life. I like to see my shifter, my handbrake, my pedal. I like to be able to talk to people in the room around me, you know, and interact with my friends and that. But it's all very personal. But what I will say is it's a hell of an upgrade from a single screen setup. And I've used triples quite a few times in the past. And what I've learned through doing this and going on that sim racing pod at Immersive Display UK is that the ones I've been on before were not properly configured. You know, there was a lot of blurring at the sides, things didn't merge properly, they didn't transition correctly, they weren't set up well, the screens were too far away or too small, and it wasn't the best experience. That had always put me off using triples before. But if you can have something this big, 55s, or even, to be honest, even if you had like 40s, and just had them close, had that front screen as close to you as you can, you know, just behind your steering wheel, they'd still wrap around past your head and still give you that sort of 180-degree field of view, which is really, really good to be able to look to your right and left and see the cars coming up beside you. You know, you can almost wave at them as if they're there. But anyway, I think that's probably the end of this video. Once again, a big thanks to LG for sponsoring the video, for sending over these screens for me to make this content with. It is very much appreciated and I am thoroughly enjoying it. And you know, to anyone that is interested in these C1 panels, they make smaller sizes as well and bigger ones. Click the link in the description to check out pricing and availability in your country. And once again, the specs of these: HDMI 2.1, so 120 Hertz, HDR, super low input lag, 6 to 10 milliseconds, 1 millisecond response time. They're OLED self-lit panel. You just can't go wrong with them. They are pretty pucker. Anyway, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the third and final sponsored video by LG, where we try and get rid of those bezels and perhaps make ourselves a little pod to race in.